I'm pleased to tell you that this New York Central icon has arrived in HO scale, and it's good. But can it pull an 18-car 20th Century Limited consist? Find out later. Bachmann has just debuted a model I've wanted since childhood, a J3 Class 464 Hudson model that's higher quality than the ancient 1970s era Rivarossi offerings and not a cantankerous brass import. It's a blend of die-cast metal and plastic that's fresh-looking and state-of-the-art mechanically. I review things differently from other modelers here on YouTube. Having been in the hobby for a couple of decades, I'm not interested in obtuse numbers rating systems or the amount of spikes I'll bestow a model at the end of the video. Let's just focus on what matters: performance, detail, and most importantly, fun. So, here's the price. Here's the flyer with the road names and numbers as they did for the first run. Here's what comes inside the box, and there you go. How well a model runs obviously determines how likely you'll be playing with it. Bachmann understood this and used a very neat approach to mounting the motor directly centered inside the boiler instead of in the firebox. This seems to have greatly improved handling and balance. The TCS WOW decoder has pretty excellent motor control, and what I found most impressive is that you can gently let the slack out of a long passenger train just like the prototype. My example runs excellently right out of the box, but it got even better after a couple of hours of running it in different speeds and directions on my layout. The true test was seeing how many passenger cars it can haul. As the premier express passenger engine for the New York Central, it was often tasked to pull everything from the 20th Century Limited's 18-car consist down to little 3-car locals on the Michigan Central. So, for testing purposes, I hooked up my SP dynamometer car right behind the engine to test everything. Behind that, I started with a 9-car consist of nothing but Walther's Proto passenger cars. It walked away slowly with the entire consist without any issues. I let that run for a while and then added more and more cars. My layout is more or less flat and features wide, super elevated curves for high-speed running. However, the building the layout is located inside has settled for over a century into the soft mud and isn't perfectly level, so this means I have some phantom grades on my layout. I tested the consist through a variety of speeds and directions, and it pulled the consist at a walking pace as easily as it did at top speed. I kept adding more and more cars until I reached the goal of 18 cars. While this dog's breakfast consist looks like some sort of Arpico private car meet, it did the job of proving it could haul an entire 20th Century Limited consist. In this case, it's a mix of Walthers, Rapido, Fox Valley, and a couple of Golden Gate Depot Harriman cars. So it gets very high marks for being able to do this, just like the prototype. Also, most importantly, this thing can pull 18 cars without traction tires. I hate traction tires on steam engines because they become hard to source parts and often misbehave and come off. Plus, they're thin rubber, which is rarely a consistent thickness and prone to becoming dry and brittle over time. It was a hot day in the workshop with fans going, so the decoder sounds aren't going to be cycled through laboriously over multiple minutes in this video review. Suffice to say, I'm impressed with the variety of things these TCS WOW decoders are capable of. Firstly, the 4 chuffs per reel revolution is pretty spot on right out of the box. This is the first decoder I've seen that natively understands this. The New York Central 6-chime whistle recording is exceptionally clean, and like a Tsunami decoder, Function 3 has a short blast for additional flavor. Another impressive thing that it's capable of is real stack talk. When a locomotive is operating hard, they really begin to bark. With an 18-car consist, it really sounded like it was working hard to accelerate and was then able to quietly coast and glide down from track speed. Small details like the cylinder cocks going for a moment after you begin moving was an especially nice touch. The only problem I had overall with the engine is that the tender shell vibrated a bit when some of the louder sounds were played. This is probably an easy fix, just gently tightening the screws that hold the tender onto the frame will help, as well as some foam tape inside to prevent harmonic vibration. The motor and mechanism is very quiet, so when you mute the sound, the roar of the wheels is about all you'll hear. I found the LED headlights on both ends to look pretty nice, not too bright, and a gentle warm white that looks convincingly like a warm incandescent bulb of the prototype. After owning a couple of dozen Bachmann steam locomotives over many years, this is hands down the finest running one I've ever played with right out of the box. Bachmann definitely deserves strong praise for this drastic improvement from their earlier drive designs. I strongly look forward to a future of 100% newly tooled steam locomotives from Bachmann if this is the benchmark for which we'll be seeing in the future. Next is detail. I happen to have a Broadway Limited J1E kicking around the shop, which we'll use as a guide to see how far tooling has progressed in the 20 years since BLI came out with their earlier Hudson in 2005. Now, the J1E is obviously not identical to the J3, but it'll give us a ballpark idea of detail fidelity. Different manufacturers care about different details, and it's shown off here. This Bachmann model has crisper detail all around with more scale-sized rivets and is overall much cleaner. Bachmann went for a combination of crisp molded-on detail and select separately applied details. This is often done to streamline manufacturing time, improve quality control, and reduce assembly man-hours per model. I think overall, this was done very well. The most important takeaway from what I'll tell you next is this. This Hudson model has good bones. If you want to continue to super detail this model up to an even higher standard, it's possible. It runs well enough to respect the time you take to detail it, and that's something new to appreciate. So with that in mind, there's a few details that could be easily improved with brass detail parts. The bell, the whistle, the safety valves, and the tender deck handrails could be things I would probably improve. The pilot coupler pocket is another area I could see improvement with cast detail parts. I really like that the model comes with a drop coupler right out of the box if you want to run it in passenger service. The back head is dimensionally correct and leaves an opportunity for super detailing with parts from Precision Scale, who makes brass super detail kits for the J3 Hudson. However, I think the model is quite beautiful as it is. I don't plan to super detail my model any further. It's such a joy to have an excellent model right out of the box. Finally, let's discuss joy. A lot of reviews are meant just to nitpick the models to death in the hopes that manufacturers will listen to your gripes and revise them for a future run. This model is probably the model that's brought me the most amount of joy right out of the box in a very, very long time. It's a dream fulfilled for me. The New York Central Hudson is an icon, made more so by Lionel's multiple O-scale offerings that older modelers remember as kids. I often debated buying an O27 model for a shelf display, but for Bachmann to not only release the J3 in HO scale, but to also have it be powerful and an excellent runner is a serious accomplishment. So I say to Bachmann USA, keep working harder to make even better steam locomotives exactly like this. Your Hudson is now my new benchmark to test all future steam locomotives against. It's a masterpiece, and anybody who wants an HO scale model of the most famous class of scrapped locomotives in history should definitely buy this. I give it the Interurban Era seal of approval. Let me know if you plan to or have already bought one. I'd love to see photos of your Hudson pulling passenger trains on your layout. This has been Interurban Era. Check out the Patreon, and I look forward to seeing you in the comments.